So I'm going to give you some tips on this cutting of the AC bracket. So let me turn this camera around. Okay, to start with, this bracket is the original one that I had cleaned up and painted because I thought it was going to be used the same way. But as it turns out, this bracket needs to be cut. And in this couple of pictures, I'm showing you the placement of the bracket with the new adapter brackets that come with the kit for mounting the aftermarket compressor from Classic Auto Air. For the holes to line up, I just temporarily stuck a bolt through the bracket holes. Also, I just used the spacer washers temporarily. They're not in the correct location, but they will be relocated when the tabs of the compressor are mounted to the bracket. I just didn't want to damage the paint on the brackets by using the lock washers while I was testing the fit. The thickness of the washers seems to be the same as the thickness of the factory mounting brackets in the front and rear. Now in this shot you can also see that I've reversed the rear bracket per the instructions so that the part of the bracket that slides under the bolt is now at the top and not at the lower bolt. Now in the instructions, the black and white picture is terrible, so I requested the PDF file, and it turns out they're color pictures, but they're still not showing that bracket as clearly as I did in my photographs. So that's why I'm sharing this modification installation step with you. There's plenty of adjustment in these brackets, but I wanted to be close as possible, so I tried to center this hole as much as I could and then have this as low as possible here, and that's as much give as there is. This doesn't quite line up perfectly. You can see there's a step right here at the back, and then I'm going to check it again against the bracket in the car. See how the bolts line up. I drilled through this side, aligned it with the hole in the bracket, matched the size, came through and cleaned up this side with a step drill bit as my chamfer. In this picture I'm showing how I used a metal compass, and this is one that I purchased again from Harbor Freight. And I first lined up the holes in this picture, but at the bottom of the bracket when it's installed on the car, and I used the compass to figure out how wide to make the scribe line so that it would follow the same circular pattern as the bolt holes on the water pump, but at the top of the bracket, and so it would make a sort of an S shape from one side of the bracket to the other. You'll notice that I have two scribe lines. The first one I made was a little bit too low, and so I rescribed it. And then on the next picture you'll see I have already cut off the upper part of the bracket. First I drilled a hole to the left of the scribe line, and that actually took longer than the tool that I used, which is a carbide blade on a jigsaw. And it literally only took maybe 30 seconds with that carbide blade to cut through this really thick metal. I spent a lot more time shaping it in the following pictures. I need to add a note. When you're using the carbide bit, the teeth break off easily if you try to make curved cuts. So you'll see that I made straight cuts on this, but I have knocked off quite a few teeth doing curved cuts when I was making the rear seat armrest. I will be attempting to model my rear seat quarter panels similar to the 2014 Mustang. In this next picture you can see the scribe line that I used a paint pen on, and then I sanded it down so you could clearly see the scribe line, which is shown near the bottom of this picture, and you can barely make out the old scribe line after that sanding on the top of the picture. And then I used a cutoff tool on edge to get as close to the scribe line as possible before I started shaping it with my grinder. So here we have the cut I made, and this, I want to pitch a tool right now. This is a tool bought at Harbor Freight inexpensively, and it's an awesome tool, especially if you have a good compressor that doesn't produce a lot of moisture in the lines. This tool, it comes with like a 2-inch sanding orbital sander head, and I went on Amazon and bought a bag of 3-inch heads that screw in, and I recommend Amazon because it is where you can get the 1/4-inch thread. It's 1/4 20, whereas Harbor Freight sells, strangely, metric thread that doesn't screw into this. So unless you want to use some features of the bag that the metric thread heads come, like there's some polishers and something, I don't even know if I could adapt those to this, but yeah, so I went online and then I bought a box of the hook and loop 3-inch 120 grit sanding discs, and I went through about 5 of them on this just to keep it easy to sand, but it only took me about 10 or 15 minutes. I sanded the whole bracket down after I cut this, and also used it to do some sanding on the edge to smooth it out right here where it was cut off, and I made it curved nicely. This is how it fits in the car, and you can see it has a nice sweeping curve to it instead of just a straight cut off. And you could see in the picture that I showed that I used another tool I got at Harbor Freight. You know, this is my dog. Hello, Belle. Okay, get down. I'm trying to make a video. So, yeah, I scratched a curved line by just placing this on the top of this little workbench and putting a couple of blocks of wood underneath of it to level it out, and then scribed the curved line from this side so that when it was cut off it looked clean and nice and like it should, not like I hacked it up. So anyways, I had painted this quickly, kind of quick and dirty, and so a lot of paint flaked off where the bolt holes were, and it was just done to have a clean bracket on the nice clean engine that I put together. So this time I sanded it down much better for better adhesion, and I'll be repainting it. It was a little too shiny anyways with the matte finish black that I was using on it. I've got another can of paint coming. I buy my paints from TCP Global, tcpglobal.com. It's in San Diego. I use the acrylic urethane paint single stage, and this is a Hot Rod Flats semi or satin black that I'm painting on here. But you can see right here in the corner, this was too shiny. I don't know if it's because the paint can was old or what, but yeah, this one's ready for paint and reinstallation with the new compressor and the new hole, and you'll see the way that I did that. Before I put the brackets and AC compressor on, I want to clean up the studs on the water pump for paint. So I put a plastic bag over the engine, and I'll be punching holes where the studs are. Okay, a little primer will make it stick better. This primer seems to work really good. I picked it's a green that looks like a olive drab green. You can tell where you painted instead of black and black. Spray is rather thin, especially if you're trying to get it all in one coat, but that's okay because it kind of keeps you from spraying too much when you see that it's spraying kind of thinned out. So while this primer dries quickly, I'm trying to make sure it's good and dry with the heat gun. Now for a little black. Satin black I think looks pretty good, or semi-gloss I mean. It's a little bit shinier than satin. Okay, it's looking ready to work with. So I bought some stainless steel hardware for the front of the engine. Obviously you're going to see that part, so you want it to look good. I'm testing to see if the threads are blocked up with paint. Yeah, there's a little bit of grab. And it feels pretty dry, so. So somewhere else in the country right now, it's probably, I don't know, snowing or cold. I've got a t-shirt on and it's pretty comfortable in Southern California. Especially in the sun, it's really comfortable right now. Best time of the year to work on a car, really. So there we go. See, I got a little paint stuck on there in the bag. Alright, let's test fit that bracket. Okay, so I'm going to take off these spacers here. Oh, I got them on tight. So as I can put these lock washers in place. And now this beautiful bracket. You can't even tell that it didn't come originally like this. It is so pretty with the top part cut away right there. And some stainless hardware for the front. Yeah, if I could afford, I would replace those with stainless as well. But yeah, I'm not worried about it for now. This, I want it to look good. Already got some stainless hardware up there. And some bolts here that are stainless. You may notice the finish on the aluminum parts here looks funny, almost like it's painted a gray, but it's actually aluminum that's been sandblasted, and I clear coated it with flat matte color, flat clear is what I meant to say. And some pieces like this one, the power steering pump bracket, have been polished. That's how they were when I bought them on the car. They may need a little bit of a touching up with polish, but for now, this is where I'm going with it. Oops, I gotta loosen this first. Uh-oh, got some fluid leaking out of the pump. Yeah, need something to hold that up. So I put some double nuts on here to just screw this in. I don't know if these are going to line up yet, but just semi-tighten. That looks pretty good. Let's show you from the front side here. And this curve follows these bolt holes for that curve. Just laid the compressor down. And we're going to have to put the bolts in place. So these two, neither one can be more than 90 degrees. So you couldn't face that down. The default installation would be facing up like this, but the hoses are going to be ugly, so I want to save the position putting it down. And then let's see how these bolts fit. So you have to stick the washers on the front of the front bracket and on the back of the back bracket, and don't drop your washers because the brackets wider, brackets are narrower than the actual AC compressor. There we go. First one's in, lock washer needed. And it feels like I'm going to have to loosen up those lower brackets to get them a little closer together. Oh yeah, much more room. Put the back one in first. So here's what it looks like. I was looking at the front of this pulley, and it does not align with the power steering pump. But this is a 7-rib compressor. I forgot that when I was first getting it, and a 6-rib setup for the belts for the rest of the accessory drive. They work together fine with the back lining up. It's starting to make sense. The bracket thickness right here at the point in front of the compressor ear, and then behind it the bracket from Classic Auto Air for adapting it, is equal to, on this side, the thickness of this spacer, which is about the same thickness as the bracket, and then mounting up to the Classic Auto Air bracket and behind it, which is what I thought I was observing before, and I forgot. But that's why the thickness on this side is double. Okay, so I'm putting back the bolts and spacers. Definitely got to keep that back bracket loose. Get these fronts in here. Snug them down. Then the rears. This is one of my favorite wrenches. It's my dad's. Got it from him 40 years ago. And it's can't read it without my glasses. Electrolyte. That's a strange brand. But I love the way it's like a dog bone bent on both ends. Because I can get in so many places, like this one at the back, without interference with that forward bracket. Oh yeah, that's fitting perfectly. As I'll show you what I'm doing on this side here. If that's going to be perfectly lined up. Put a little light on the subject. And here you can see what I was talking about, the difficulty getting to the back of this lower bracket. So having this nice wrench, this new Husky I bought with mini teeth and ratchet, it's able to fit in there. Have to use this one on the outside and hope this little oldie fits. Yep, look at that. Beautiful. No telling if the small socket will fit either. Such a difficult place. Yeah, just barely. I literally get one click out of this. Fortunately, it seems pretty snug from before. One click each, and that's tight. And all the brackets are tight. Just this lower set of bolts. Again, my little dog bone comes to the rescue. I would not be able to fit another wrench in here. Getting away with the camera. Let's tighten. There we go. There it is. No way to get this any other way. Compressor's tight. I think my 9/16 was already tightened. Let's check it. And tight. Now I'm going to have to run my fuel lines, put the compressors in place. Looks like it'll line up in the pump. Let me see if I can position this so you can tell. Looks pretty well lined up.